Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stonks Maxing. Today is day 106 now, so we've made a lot of progress, but unfortunately, big news this week, Pat Gelsinger was ousted as the CEO of Intel. So I honestly thought that he was a great CEO, really put Intel on what I think was going to be a very strong growth phase of the company. There is some short-term risk, short-term being a couple of years since he started as CEO, and up to now it's about a 4-year period, and probably another 2 more years for his plan to fully come into fruition. The 5 nodes, 4 years, and it just kind of sucks to see him getting knocked out like that. I feel like there's been chatter on Twitter about who could be next. It's very hard to find a technical CEO that's capable of leading a product and foundry business. Some people are saying the board of directors, what are they doing? It seems like got a notification on my phone. Seems like the board of directors are sort of making potentially short-term decisions on something that shouldn't be thought of as just a short-term decision. Yeah, I don't know, but what I want to do is there is an Intel at UBS conference with Naga and David, the CFO and EVP of, I guess, interim CEO David Zinsner and EVP of Intel Foundry Services Naga. I forgot his full name, but I'll leave it at that. So they had a conference, and I'm gonna listen to that, see if I can get any read-throughs about what's going on. So let's do it.
So, Dave, let me start with you. Big announcement. Yet there wasn't a financial update in the announcement. You're 2/3 of the way through the quarter. Wondering if there was anything you wanted to say about that.
We typically don't provide updates, and we still have another month to go of wood to chop. So we stand by the guidance that we gave at earnings. And more to update, obviously, when we do our earnings at the end of January, which I'll be doing double duty on, it sounds like.
Okay, great. And then I guess a bigger picture question that I'm getting, and I'm asking both of you actually, bigger picture question that I'm getting is, if I'm an external foundry customer and I've been engaging with you, and you're making progress on 18A, but given this change, does this cause me to pull back and see what the direction of the company is going to be going forward? Does this affect that at all?
Yeah, it shouldn't. I mean, the board was pretty clear that the core strategy remains intact. We still want to be a world-class foundry, want to be the Western provider of leading-edge silicon to customers. That remains our goal. But we also understand that it's important for the number one customer of foundry to be successful in order for foundry to be successful. And so the board wants to also put emphasis on execution around the product side of the business to make sure that the foundry business remains successful. We're still engaged with customers. As we talked about at the last earnings, we've got a number of RFPs we're working through.
Okay, so what was clear that we're becoming leading Western foundry chips. So they are emphasizing the product side more than what Gelsinger sounds like. What Gelsinger than what was focusing on.
Actually, just an hour and a half earlier, I was on a call around one of those RFPs, which looks pretty good. So, we intend to be continue to focus on adding customers to our long lifetime deal value for the foundry side. I'd say the one thing that has definitely come out of the way the board's thinking about this is they do recognize and have pushed us that, hey, we've made a lot of investments from a capital perspective in foundry, and we need to start seeing some incremental ROIC on those investments. And so, and that's what we're committed to do. That's going to be one of my major focuses, definitely while I'm CFO, or as I'm CFO, but of course in the interim period where I'm CEO, I'll obviously be focused on that as well. And I think, as you think about like when as they're looking at CEOs, to come in, they're going to look at that kind of model and that kind of aspiration from the CEO. So I'm going to guess. Obviously, I'm not in the process, but I'm guessing that the CEO will have, both some capability around foundry as well as on the product side.
Nuts.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. And there was a question last night at our dinner that I thought was a good one. That it was notable that MJ also got promoted to head of Intel Products and also interim CEO. So more of an emphasis on the board's part on the product side, maybe in recognition that there's been, I'm not saying too much, but there's been a lot of foundry. And so that kind of in conjunction with kind of, where you are, does that, there's a question of who, like, if the product business is what's important to the board now, Pat knew the products better than anybody. So there is some confusion, I think, among some investors. If that's the emphasis for the board, Pat seemed like the perfect guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't read into the fact that the board wants to focus, make sure we, build out the products business and continue to execute there while, standing up a foundry business as something related to Pat and the board deciding that now is the right time. That was, for personal reasons specific to Pat and the board. I think, though, it was very important that they had MJ, Michelle, for two reasons. One, I think her stepping into the product CEO position is important. I think that has been one thing that we have noticed is there are things that transcend all the business units on the product side that probably were getting sub-optimized, and I think having a leader over all of it allows us to be a little bit more functional about how we drive products, have excellence across all those functions, perform better, execute better, and be cohesive across the business units in terms of how they go to market. I think that was absolutely important, and I think that's the primary reason why the board felt MJ should have that role on a permanent basis. And then the fact that we had MJ allows the timing to work out the way it is. I mean, the good news is that we had somebody very capable that could step in. She knows all the customers really well. They all love her. She's been in that business unit or sales role for, decades. So she understands the business quite well. So she was kind of the perfect person, not only to take on the product CEO job, but also to slot in as this kind of in this co-CEO role. And then I can, the areas that probably aren't, or haven't been, areas where she's had a lot of exposure to, like finance and investors and some of the more operational activities, I can, take on that slack. And the good news is that, I got people like Naga that are amazing at that and, augment what I'm not as good at.
Great. Well, let me ask Naga the question. So you've been at Intel, I think, for maybe 6 months.
3 months.
3 months. Okay. Time goes fast.
Seemed like 10.
Seems like. So can you just give us a little bit? You were SVP of technology development at Micron prior to coming to Intel. Can you tell us what brought you to Intel? What opportunities you saw here, and what are your impressions in the first few months?
So thanks for having me here first. And I was with Micron for 23 years. And I was doing technology development, manufacturing, and different roles within Micron. I was very happy and satisfied with where we were positioned as a company and as a technology development team. And I'm thankful to Micron for everything that they have done for me. Then it was opportunistic that I started talking with Pat and Ann. And over a period of months that I was talking with them, I I really believed in the consequential journey of trying to set up a foundry. I believe that Intel Foundry is very important for Intel. It is very important for the semiconductor ecosystem, and it is very important to have some level of competitive space that's going to continue to drive innovation. So I truly believe in the mission that Pat and Ann and everyone in Intel is driving towards with this foundry. That's number one. Number two, I was very happy with where we have brought Micron. As part of the journey, we have set Micron as technology leaders in memory, packaging, and financial stability where the company was. And also, my team was in a very good place. So I thought, if I'm going to go do something else, then this was a pretty good time. I was with Micron for 23 years, and I was telling Tim this yesterday that I joined in 2001, June, and then 2001, September 11 happens, and my first increment was a 10% pay cut. And probably for the next 10 years, I never sold the stock because the only direction it went was downwards. But I still stayed with the company because I liked the challenge, I liked what I was doing with Micron, and really liked the journey. And the last 10 years, it was transformational. So I felt I had done a good role, and the company was in a good place for me to go do something different. And that's the third piece was, personally, there's very few people who can do technology development role in the industry. There's very few that can do technology development and manufacturing. And then there's very few who can do both in memory and logic. This was a great opportunity also for me personally to say, how can I expand myself? So that's the combination of those three, that's why I'm here.
And how do you see, how are you going to run manufacturing differently than it's been run? I think last night we talked a little bit about, you were talking about building a little more to what you call demand certainty. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah. And I didn't address your last part, I'll dovetail on it, which is what I've observed is there's a significant cultural change that needs to happen within Intel for us to transition from being an IDM 1.0 to becoming a foundry. And even not just a foundry, but to be successful in semiconductor, there's different aspects how TD and manufacturing work together. TD is technology development. I see it as a relay race where there's 4 labs or how many ever labs, and it doesn't matter how one does in an individual lab.
Okay, so there's labs. Thinks there needs to be a cultural shift. BA.
The real result is who wins the race. And it doesn't matter what happens in TD, what's in manufacturing. It's the continuity all the way to how we deliver to our customers. And that's a change that we want to drive. Part of what I see happening today is TD is driving the technology, but manufacturing doesn't have the mindset of continuous improvement, year-over-year changes, constant innovation. Innovation doesn't mean it's only backside power, but small changes in process and equipment that drives cost reduction, performance improvement, that mindset is not there. As a company, when we had monopoly and we were IDM 1.0, we were building to inventory. But now we have to change ourselves, build to order. That's a very different mindset. The other mindset that I'm seeing is we are very driven towards no wafer left behind. That means you cannot miss any demand. You're okay to have built out extra capacity, believing that there is going to be some demand, and in a monopoly, that's okay. But now you have to go to no capital left behind, where you're eking out every wafer out of a tool and trying to drive efficiency further. That's a cultural change that needs to happen.
Okay, so change to built for inventory, right? Something like that. Yeah, I mean, this guy seems very well spoken. I have to
So a
admit.
lot of change doesn't mean it's only backside power, but small changes in process and equipment that drives cost reduction, performance improvement, that mindset is not there. As a company, when we had monopoly and we were IDM 1.0, we were building to inventory. But now we have to change ourselves, build to order. That's a very different mindset. The other mindset that I'm seeing is we are very driven towards no wafer left behind. That means you cannot miss any demand. You're okay to have built out extra capacity, believing that there is going to be some demand, and in a monopoly, that's okay. But now you have to go to no capital left behind, where you're eking out every wafer out of a tool and trying to drive efficiency further. That's a cultural change that needs to happen. So a lot of changes where the team operates as one team, continuous improvement, and a big focus on customers. That's another change that needs to happen, is having a mindset of customer focus. All of those, easier said than done. There's going to be challenges, but all those changes need to happen culturally.
Good, thank you. So I wanted to ask about progress on 18A. I know Pat put this, which is now famous, D0 number of 0.4 out, and I've written a couple notes on this, just trying to put it in context like what that means, and it depends on the die size to translate the yield. But can you talk a little bit about where 18A is versus where you think it needs to be to sort of intersect this second half of 25 ramp? And B, the thing that I hear from some of the customers is that, or some of the prospective foundry customers, is that 18A is still a bit more geared toward HPC. And as a broad foundry node, the customers that I talk to are sort of like, 18A is great if you have an HPC application. 14A might be the node that's more broadly applicable to external foundry customers. Can you talk about that as well?
Yeah. So when Pat announced the defect density D0 less than 0.4, it was a point in time, and it was to give the indication that we are progressing as expected. If I look at it today, we are progressing. There's several milestones that we have met, and there are still many milestones ahead for the technology development. And if I wear my technology development hat for a minute, there's always challenges when you're introducing new technologies. And there's ups and downs, but what I would say is there's nothing fundamentally challenging on this node. Now it is about going through the remaining yield challenges, defect density challenges, continuing to improve it, improving process margin, and getting it ramped. Will there be challenges? There will be, but I think we are progressing. And next year, as I look at it, primarily the first half will be getting the node into engineering samples into our customer's hand and getting the feedback and starting a ramp in Oregon. And the second half of 2025, our milestone is certifying the node, getting it ramped in Arizona, and getting the product on the shelves so that customers can buy it. So that's the milestones. And
okay, so tape outs in Oregon. High volume manufacturing in Arizona. So that's coming up. That's coming up very soon.
And we are working towards meeting all those milestones over the next year. It's very critical for us. 18A, to your second part of the question, when we said we are going to be foundry, 10.7 was way past, and then Intel 3 also had several decisions already made, and even 18A to some extent, decisions were made. So you're absolutely right. There are certain aspects of 18A that's extremely powerful for compute applications, especially the backside power. It's going to be very beneficial for compute applications. It can benefit mobile depending on how the designs are done, but because the customer engagement is more later, it doesn't address the full TAM. And 18A, our biggest customer for the next 2-3 years is still Intel products, which goes back to what Dave was saying. The Intel products, we know the demand, we know what needs to happen, and our focus is to ramp it and continue to get more customers on 18A. But all this learning is getting implemented into 14A. So as 14A comes in, there will be a broader market that 14A will address, including compute and mobile and other applications, and also how the PDKs are done, so that it's not just for with Intel focus, but it's also focused on the broader ecosystem, taking 14A and applying it to their designs.
Great, thank you. Dave, maybe I can ask you as the, maybe I couldn't ask you this question as the CFO as much as I can now as the interim CEO. But when you think about the transformational act that you're trying to pull off over the next few years, do you think that there's still an aspect of your you're making decisions for the product business that aren't the best thing for the foundry business, and you're making, and vice versa, because there is, and my question really revolves around, I know you've created a separation between the two, and the product business is keeping the foundry business honest, as you say, but at the end of the day, you're still part of one company,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, the product business, namely the client business, is what keeps the fabs full.
Yeah.
And so, is there still a push to make decisions? It seems to me like there's still a bit of a push where you're making decisions that might not be the best thing for the product business to keep the IFSN manufacturing where you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I might say it a little differently. I'd say that we are definitely guiding the products business to drive a lot of volume into our Intel foundry, for sure. Because we need to keep the foundry full, we need to get the learnings and so forth. But we are giving them some ability, and obviously some of the products that are coming out next year have heavy external foundry content, and so they do have that flexibility built in. They're also they're all Intel shareholders too. They want to make sure the whole company's successful, so they're going to be biased towards driving volume into foundry. But that said, they got to sell good products, and so that's the tension, and that this should make Naga and his team better. They'll drive to be better because they know they're competing.
But at the end of the day, you're still part of one company,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, the product business, namely the client business, is what keeps the fabs full.
Yeah.
And so, is there still a push to make decisions? It seems to me like there's still a bit of a push where you're making decisions that might not be the best thing for the product business to keep the IFSN manufacturing where you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I might say it a little differently. I'd say that we are definitely guiding the products business to drive a lot of volume into our Intel foundry, for sure. Because we need to keep the foundry full, we need to get the learnings and so forth. But we are giving them some ability, and obviously some of the products that are coming out next year have heavy external foundry content, and so they do have that flexibility built in. They're also they're all Intel shareholders too. They want to make sure the whole company's successful, so they're going to be biased towards driving volume into foundry. But that said, they got to sell good products, and so that's the tension, and that this should make Naga and his team better. They'll drive to be better because they know they're competing against external foundries that one of which is world class, and that only serves to make our processes better over time. And so I think it's a good model, actually. Ultimately, probably there'll be more and more independence, but I think foundry will also be better and better and more competitive as time progresses too, and so I think it works out.
And how do you think about just Naga's comment about the building or planning capex more to the high confidence part of demand? I think, yeah.
So thinks the model of separating product and foundry is actually very strong. Okay, let's see. Has strong incentive alignments. So most of the foundry learning will come from the Intel products on the wafer lines. Needs to ensure that foundries are always pushing out wafers. Utilization order, I guess because the foundries are always running, in order to make them profitable. Okay, so let's take a look. I wonder. Okay, nice. It's still going. All right.
You know, we can all debate how successful we think Foundry is going to be, but as the CFO, when you're thinking about CapEx and now with sort of what the board wants to do, how should we think about how you're planning CapEx? Because is this still too much? It seems like it could still come down quite a bit.
It can come down, you're saying? Yeah. Yeah, I would say, Naga bringing in this memory mindset to the company has been super helpful. And as I was leaving last night after to grab dinner with somebody, one of the guys that works for Naga came over to me and he said, "Oh, you would not believe the amount of detail we're going through on CapEx. We're going line by line through this stuff." And he's challenging everything. I mean, and we're like picking off things. And, some of it's for reuse. He's challenging the reuse assumptions. He's challenging whether it needs to even be invested in some specific tool. So
there, 360 is going to be really bad.
But the discipline is, I think, great. And so I think that we are starting to grok how we need to operate as a foundry. Is you got to absolutely think about every dollar going into capital and scrutinizing it for sure.
I worry.
In addition,
with this much scrutiny, is there a chance that you gloss over something like EUV? I don't know. I really don't know because I'm not a tech expert. Is scrutinizing every line item of the foundry CapEx expenses, getting rid of anything that is unnecessary, us questioning reuse assumptions. Okay, and is there a risk of not sharing? Is there a risk of under-investing technology?
We're just thinking about how to invest differently, I think, which is, Pat had talked about in prior earnings calls. We're really moving towards a model where, hey, we're going to assume a relatively, GDP type growth rate for the business. And by the way, it's not just capital, it's also operating expenses too. We're going to invest based on those growth rates. And if, things turn and we think they're going to be even stronger, maybe it requires us to have a little bit more investment either on OpEx or capital. We'll make those decisions, but the fall through should be quite good if we're modeling it that way. And so I think that's absolutely the right way to run the business. As Naga was already intimating, it's not the way Intel necessarily thought about capital investment in the past. And so what we should see is incrementally better ROIC for capital dollars that get deployed, because we're just way more conservative around how we roll out capital.
So how did you think? Yeah, you've been here for many years. So how is this? I think it's still hard for you.
Okay. Okay, I actually think now I'm gonna have to go. I gotta meet up with some people, but I think this was very helpful, actually. So thanks for tuning in. The fate of Intel is still very questionable, but I want to say there's still hope. There's still hope. I don't think the game is over yet, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Definitely going to be on the lookout. With that being said, catch you guys in the next one. Peace.